What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex, and in this video, I want to talk about E3, I suppose one last time, one more time, maybe for my third channel, Back to the Past. Maybe we can look back at some kind of legendary E3 shows. There were many of them, and that's how I can kind of keep E3 around, at least in my own job, in my own work. I can bring it back, but, it is a sad day, and you could say, well, Alex, you've made plenty of videos trashing the current day E3 and all that stuff, and you're right, dear viewer, you're right. The last several videos I've made, the last several years where it's been on and off again, right? They announce it. There's really no interest, it seems like. They cancel it. All that, they try the digital one, I guess. That also fails. And, I have been pretty down on it. I don't think today's the day to do that. I do want to look at E3 in a brighter light in this video, talk a little bit about it, but to go over the news in case you're wondering, but you can see by the title and everybody's talking about it today, E3's over. They officially said, it's done. They're still going to work on things like in the gaming industry at other times of the year, but literally what as E3 is not coming back and will never come back. So it is sad. The first thing I thought of was actually happy memories. I'm not truly like the Grinch or anything. I loved E3 growing up, okay? It's why I've actually been so down on it in recent years, because I grew up, I believe, in that kind of golden, and even when I started watching it, that golden era. Sean Layden walking out and Crash Bandicoot coming back. Like, there's nothing better than that. Does that make sense? There's nothing truly better than that happening. And that's just one example. E3, for many years, was considered the thing. And I even remember, not just even the show itself, but I remember, respecting and, getting excited for other people that would then go there. When I was 12 or 13, I started to try to enter the gaming industry in terms of a fan, right? I want to play as many games as possible, kind of learn about stuff. And it took a long time, and I don't even know if I'm there right now, but one of the things I would do is IGN. IGN was my go-to site. Podcast Beyond was my go-to podcast for many, many years. The legendary, really, trio, that they had there. And I just remember every year getting closer to E3 and just reading the stories or the blogs or the posts or whatever from all these different sites of, when you go there and you cover it as a journalist, you're awake for 23 hours a day. You sleep for 1 hour a day, and, you're there for 4 or 5 days, and it's insane. It's insane. And I just remember thinking that's cool. And actually, growing up, there was a brief period of time I wanted to be a game journalist, and I thought, well, I'd like to cover E3 one day. And even now, do I wish that I could attend an E3? Yeah, because I think there was just something special about it. So I guess that's more from the people that covered it. What about the show itself? Well, like I said, there were so many great years of E3. When you think of your big game getting announced, or the big trailer, or the big reveal, right, or the big surprise, you think to E3. Jeff has done a pretty good job, and I think Game Awards, even say when he started it 10 years ago, and those years, those first couple of years, right, when E3 was still really big, you almost kind of had two of them. Now, the Game Awards never really, it wasn't E3, it wasn't to the size of E3. You could argue that the Game Awards does provide us a somewhat equivalent amount of updates and announcements as an E3 would. If both of these events happened at the same time, when E3 was at its strongest and the Game Awards was at its strongest, you'd have two very similar events happening twice a year, right? Which isn't, and I mean, I guess that's what Jeff Keighley is trying to do with Summer Game Fest. And I will say, he's never quite accomplished it with Summer Game Fest. He's getting closer. He's getting closer and closer because there's that added benefit with E3 of going there, right? Now, for actually many years, you couldn't go there. Only towards the tail end, not the very, very tail end, but, towards the tail end, did they open it up for, you had days where just civilians off the street could go in and try out these games. And again, that's where I would say, yeah, I really would have liked to have gone to one. And I guess nowadays, maybe go to one Game Awards or Summer Game Fest in my life and, kind of call it there. But I don't regret it because I never really had the opportunity to do E3. It just never manifested itself. And so I don't look back and say dang it, I had a chance and I didn't do it, so I'm stupid for doing that. But it is sad. I will say again, the last couple years, it's different now. And I think that is what makes E3 special, right? Because at the time, like I said, all of the big announcements, when you think to your God of Wars getting announced, or like I said, the Crash Bandicoot is one of the strongest ones in my head. A lot of Bethesda moments, and a lot of them aren't all that great. Todd Howard tends to trip himself up at like the E3 stage back in the day. But, whenever I think to these moments, whether they're good or bad, they're kind of legendary in their own right. You know what I mean? And whenever you think of them, they're always at E3. Like, they're always there. And, maybe that changes now when you think of legendary events. Maybe it'll be somewhere else. But you think of E3. Where we're at now, it doesn't work the same way. There's more independence. I think that even hurts Jeff Keighley. What's the common excuse that we use for Jeff Keighley things all the time if you want to give him an excuse, right? Well, why wasn't this game shown, that game shown, this? Well, they kind of do their own thing. EA does whatever they feel like. Ubisoft has their own stuff. Sony has, and Nintendo. Let's talk about that just for a second. That just popped, and that's a funny story, right? Nintendo kind of killed E3, right? Nintendo was the thing and the company that started it all. When Nintendo left and said, we can do this on our own, we don't need you. And in fact, we'll do it like the same time, same day, we don't really care. Then when everybody else followed them, that's kind of where it all fell apart. So if you want to ask yourself, why did E3 die? You can only, I think, point yourself to Nintendo to I think, decide that for you. But I actually, I remember that. And that could have been, like, my last year of high school. I remember, like, being in a computer class and, like, looking at, in June, because I went to school through, like, the end of June. My school was, like, Labor Day to, towards the end of June. So I was in school many years, almost all the years, for E3. And I remember, like, I would do my work. I was a good student. I was an A student. And then, go on IGN and just look at just the 30 freaking articles. Or one thing I always loved was IGN would post, like, a schedule, right? Like, they were going to do, like, 20 games in a day. They were each, like, 10, 15-minute, chunks to it. Some of them you knew going in. Some of them were, like, mystery items that they revealed once the game got announced at the show. Then IGN was able to do. And again, like, it was just different. Like, outlets got to see the stuff a couple days early. They got to get their write-ups ready. And then when it was announced, everybody was able to kind of jump on it, right? Just very different. Something that you can't do as much anymore. And also just, like, the world of, I believe still, like, not really wanting to kind of come together for something like this. Again, it happens to a degree for Summer Game Fest or Game Awards, but it's actually been proven for Summer Game Fest, like, even if Jeff gives it all that he's got, and I'm sure he tries very, very hard, right? There's nothing that he can really do to reach what E3 did. The amount of people that would show up, the amount of people that even would watch, maybe he could match viewership potentially, and he certainly, smashes records for Game Awards. But when it comes to, like, in person, like, people going and it literally being like a week, it helps the local economy. It helps everybody. You have these tech sites that normally don't touch games, or even like political sites that would then talk specifically about E3. You don't get that now. You don't. So there is a lot to E3 that still kind of stands the test of time. And again, I understand why it's special. I never want people, in the past videos I've made of, shunning it and all that stuff. I think they made a ton of mistakes. I think the industry has changed. Maybe not necessarily for the better, but the industry has changed, and they weren't able to adapt. And it wasn't going to work, And I mean, like, I definitely saw this coming. You could probably look at videos 3 years ago, and I would probably have said the same stuff. So I don't want to say, like, I'm a prophet in that way, but it's not shocking. Like, this news isn't shocking, but it is saddening. It absolutely is, because this was a huge part of, my childhood and childhood. Like, I got into games when I was, like, 12 or 13. So when I say childhood, I really mean my teenage years. But this was something that, like, got me into it. I remember the first couple of years on the channel, on podcast now. A lot of those videos I have privated. You can't actually see them, but I would cover E3. I would stay up till 6 to 7 a.m., get no sleep, and make like 7 videos, which isn't all that. It's not all that much for me now because I do that like every day, but I'd make like 7 videos based off of the Bethesda show starting. Well, I'm going to watch it, and then I'm going to pick 5 games, and I'm going to make 5 videos, and it's going to go up overnight. It's going to go up at like 2 a.m. where nobody watches my channel. I did that like for the first couple of years that I was around on YouTube. I covered it because it was something I always wanted to do. Like I said, I wanted to do it as a journalist, so I should just do it as a YouTuber. And I guess in a way that kind of steered me, right, to doing Summer Game Fest, Game Awards, Gamescom, all that stuff. So I will absolutely miss it. It just was never going to work. Like, it's odd. It's odd to say it. It's hard to say it, or, it's sad to say it as well. But it's just not something that I think you could do nowadays. And like I said, like, they've tried. They tried to do it. They tried to do it, digitally and not, in person. That didn't work. They've tried to do, in-person stuff a few times, and they end up canceling it like a few months after. It's like, why'd you even try it? Obviously, maybe they put a little effort in and it just doesn't work out, and they, pull the plug pretty quickly, on those decisions. So rest in peace, truly. Rest in peace, E3. Huge part of me getting into games. I'll always love you. Always love the best years. There were some terrible years as well. Let's not forget those. But again, in a day where we should be remembering the best, E3 was unbeatable. When it was going and when it was at its best, you couldn't top it, and you still probably can't top it now. I will absolutely give it that. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. Make sure, as always, you guys are subscribed, bell icon turned on, and I hope to see you all on the next one.